Our minimum daily requirement for carbohydrates is 0. We have essential amino acids, those are proteins, essential fatty acids, but nope, no essential carb. A nutrient is essential if we have to have it to function, and we can't make it from something else. So how do we recommend to these people to eat? Because it seems like that would be really important, and it is. Let's focus just on type 2 diabetes, because the general recommendations are to tell patients with type 2 diabetes to consume 40 to 65 grams of carbohydrates per meal, plus more at snacks. Trust me on this, that's a lot of carbs. And we have this set up. Eat carbs, your glucose goes up, your insulin goes up, and you have hunger and fat storage. Everything you eat is either a carbohydrate, a protein, or a fat. And they all have a very different effect on glucose and therefore insulin levels, as you can see on the graph. So when we eat carbohydrates, our insulin and glucose are going to spike up fast. And with proteins, it looks a lot better. But take a look at what happens when we eat fat. Essentially nothing. A flat line. And this is going to wind up being very important. Yes, we are essentially recommending that they eat exactly what's causing their problem. Sound crazy? It really, really is. Because at its root, diabetes is a state of carbohydrate toxicity. Our minimum daily requirement for carbohydrates is 0.
As it shows on the chart. So when we eat carbohydrates, our insulin will surge. Okay, very interesting. But is it true? This is what is going on, okay? This is it. This is what's going on. We are surrounded by people who want to get in on the truth movement. This has been going on for a few years, probably about the same time that the internet came out. And we all learned something. And we want to go out and tell people. Now, look, I understand people are wrong sometimes. I'm not begrudging anyone for being zealous for health and maybe being wrong. But we have individuals like Barbara O'Neill or somebody that is just very influential. And here's a lady on some kind of a crazy TED Talk or whatever, acting as though she knows everything. They come in like they're representing some new idea, like a book. Oh, we never understood this before. But when Adam and Eve was in the garden, the Lord Almighty got it wrong. He made these two individuals, Adam and Eve, from a rib or something. And then he made an orchard, and there were all these fruits growing on the trees in the orchard. And some of them he called fig. Another tree Adam called peach. And there was one over there he called avocado. Oh, look at the banana. How do you know that's a banana, Eve? Well, you told me, Adam. You said we're going to name it banana. Oh, okay. And what are those, my dear? Well, that's a pineapple. All right. Let me explain this to you, okay? Because, you see, I'm Adam and I'm so darn smart. All those things you see that the Lord said you should eat, it's a trick. It's all a bunch of carbohydrates and it's going to kill you deader than a doornail. Now, go out there in the field. You see all that grass? Yeah, Adam, I see it. Okay, I want you to pluck all those grains. Well, how are we going to do that, man? That's a lot of work, Adam. I'd rather go back in the garden and just pick a banana off the tree, and they're tasty too. No. You can't have carbohydrates, dear. You have zero requirements for that, my love. Okay, the only way we're going to get any nutrition is we got to get out of this garden, right? Let's go and start picking those grains. Wait a minute, holy carbohydrates, Eve. This thing we call wheat has carbohydrates in it too. And oats and barley, there's carbohydrates. You tricked me, Adam. Oh, no, it was the snake. He's the one. Okay, no. Okay, well, maybe beans. Let's go have some beans, darling. What are these vines growing? Oh, there's little pods. Well, oh, they're hard. All right, well, let's put them in a pot, cook them up. You got some salt, dear? No, I haven't been to the ocean in days. Oh, okay, well, let's run down to the ocean, grab some salt. So we can put that in there because these beans ain't good the way they are. Man, oh man, it's just kind of, just need some salt, don't you think? What do you do with salt, honey? Well, when we get a little more sinful, we'll go out and start killing animals. We're going to need the salt to preserve the meat. Oh, okay, that's what we use salt for. But the funny thing, there's no salt in any of the foods. There's like no sodium chloride in any food. But there's a lot of sodium chloride in the ocean. And there's this whole big field, like a desert, and it's just like 2-3 inches of salt all over the bottom of it. We will scrape it up and we'll weigh it. We'll sell it by the pound to these unsuspecting Canaanites as they're walking through here. Oh, look there's children of Cain. Oh man, they're bad people. We can trick them, get a little money. What are we gonna do with the money? Well, we'll one day we'll build a Walmart. We'll be able to use the money. See? Oh, okay. So you have some plan. I'm glad that you have a plan. Well, they ate the beans, and then Eve, this wise woman, wisecracker, she looks it up on the internet. I don't know. Maybe they had an internet back those days. She looks it up and it says, oh, beans have got carbohydrates. What? Well, how about some of those red, beautiful fruit growing off that vine? Oh, that's a tomato, dear. And those are poison. They have lectins. And by the way, so are the beans. Full of lectins, you see. And darling, we have zero, count them, zero requirement for lectins. And those acorns, well, they're just growing everywhere on these things called oak trees. Can we eat those, honey? No, there's carbohydrates in that too. And those darn acorns, along with a lot of other these foods that you're trying to feed me, they got this thing called a tannin. And that's another poison. And get this, I looked it up on AI. That's why I know. But get this, you have zero requirements for tannins in your body. Oh, and look at this one, honey. Whew, that's a pretty one. What's the name of this one? Well, Adam, I think you said you're going to call it marijuana. Oh my, why do you call it marijuana? Well, that's your name, honey. In one of your incarnations, you're going to be Mary, the Virgin Mother. And so I wanna you, so it's a marijuana. You know what I'm saying? When we get to that point, we're going to need a lot of that stuff. Well, honey, that's just wonderful. But, cannabinoids are probably harmful to your brain and your nervous system. And, we don't want you running around doing that. So all this food that the Lord has created is just plain poison. And the biggest thing that we find in all these foods that the Lord hath made with the seed therein is all these darn carbohydrates. I wonder why the Lord is so ridiculous. And maybe it's a joke he's playing on us. He says, don't eat carbohydrates. Oh man, that'll kill you dead. Look at the insulin spike in there. Man, but you see, for some darn reason, when they took the children of Israel into the promised land, they said, I want you to eat these 7 foods. First one is carbohydrates. Oh, it's got a little protein and a few other fats and things that are healthy, but it's a lot of carbohydrates. And the next one's, another just pretty much carbohydrates and a little bit of protein. And then the next one that we're going to have you eat here in this land of milk and honey is grapes and pomegranates, and we're going to make wine out of it. Oh, you glutton. Yeah, we're drunkards. Oh, man, we're just drinking this stuff. It makes our heart merry. But, it's not recommended by the, the Department of Human Resources down there at the, at the government office. But the next thing that we're going to have here in the land of milk and honey and the land of promise, with all these rivers flowing everywhere. That sounds more like the land of Goshen, doesn't it? With the land flowing with milk and honey. And right there in the cranial cloister of the brain, as it goes into the Mediterranean, all these little rivers that mimic all the ventricles in the brain that create the fluid of life, right? The spinal fluid. It comes down through the ventricles. And right there in the center Oh, there's the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. All right. Well, it's called the pineal gland, honey, and it separates this fluid in and creates two hormones. One is melatonin, kind of a yellowish substance like honey, and the other one, made by the pituitary, the follicle stimulator hormone, and that is FSH, or fish. Remember, Jesus gave them 2 fishes? Oh, and 5 loaves, because 5 represents the 5 senses, the lower carnal body. But up there in the heavenly area, you got 2 fishes. Now, the reason for that is there are 5 senses. There's the 5 books of Torah. All of this is carnal commandments and lower nature stuff. And from Scorpio all the way to Aries, there are 5 houses. And this is what the Bible calls hell, the lower regions of the earth. Just as you get out of Libra, that's the judgment. You go through 5 houses, and this is the 5 months of torment that the world goes through. But we don't have to go through, because we've been raised up. We went up into the upper room, and we were baptized by the Aquarian man. We went through all of that, went down into hell, and we came back up, raised from the dead. And right before we get to the place where we begin to rise, we see these 2 fishes. Yeah, that's Pisces. And Jesus just said, look, the 5 senses is just a learning process. You're going to perceive reality with these 5 senses, but you can't trust them all the time. It's just a theater. It's a classroom. When you get to the house of Pisces, that's when I'm going to go out as the Lord and get my disciples, and we're going to be fishers of men. And we're going to take these fishes and bring them in, and we're going to have the 5 houses complete with the 2 fishes. And then we're going to rise on the horizon, go into the upper room, which, the Aquarian man has already prepared for us. And we're going to go up in there and have the Lord's Supper. What's the Lord's Supper? That must be the Passover. Well, no, the Passover is those 5 loaves, that probably brought death. The learning experience, partaking of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you know what I mean? But what we're doing is we're having the Lord's Supper, and he broke bread with them on every 8th day, which is the New Testament way of saying, another time it uses the term first day of the week. And it uses the word 8 because that would be like saying the first day, because you go 7 and then the 8th is really the first day. So they broke bread on the 8th day, and they did this all the way down till the 50th day, which is Pentecost, which is always lands on the Sunday. And there they had the great harvest, the wedding cake, the wedding wine that was transmuted from water into wine, the wedding at Cana. And there was some cannabis there. And they partook, and they saw the Lord, and they went into the upper room. It was all prepared for them. The great supper, the great festival. And I'll be darned, there were figs and pomegranates and grapes. We're going to have a good time, looks like tonight, man. We're going to make some wine. And that bread, see, we're living here in these days where we ain't got no yeast, we ain't got no Walmart. We just take this bread, knead it, and lay it on the countertop, put a towel over it, let it sit there a couple of days. It starts fermenting, and whee! It makes LSD, a real LSD, not the kind that screws up your brain, but just the kind that really takes you on a trip to the stars, baby. And this is the food that was provided by nature. But listen, the FDA is not apparently hip with this. They're like, no, don't do that kind of bread making. Don't even know how to do that. We're going to give you some kind of fungus we scraped off a papaya, and you can put that in your bread. It won't do anything. It won't make you high or nothing. And that honey that we're going to give you, that we're going to mass produce with these honey farmers or beekeepers, they're going to have some kind of like fields of clover, and we're going to make clover honey. Well, what does that do? Well, it's sweet, but not really the kind of honey that the Lord had in mind, because back in nature, when the bees could just go out there and make honey wherever they wanted to, there weren't just fields of clover. There were lots of flowers poking up through those fields of clovers that the bees actually preferred over the little dinky little white flowers on the clover. Yeah, they went for the azaleas as well. Rhododendrons in the mountain areas, rainy areas. There were daffodils in the valleys, and various other kinds of flowering plants that the bees would make honey with, and it would produce a psychoactive honey that you would put on your bread as well. They call it a narcotic. I know. Well, poppies are narcotics too, aren't they? And well, even yeah, I know a little old lady got arrested by the SWAT team down there in Idaho because she was growing poppies, little flowers in her garden. She didn't know there was any prohibition against growing flowers, but yeah, they don't like having that sweet honey, friends. Those azaleas and daffodils and poppies and all these beautiful flowers, man, those are illegal. Guarantee it. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Most of the states that outlaw all of this, or the reason we outlaw all of this, remember the Sunday laws where you couldn't buy any wine on Sunday because, yeah, Christ wouldn't like that. Well, wait a minute. Wasn't Christ drinking wine on Sundays? Oh, boy. Down there at the love feast, and they're all getting drunk, and some were having too much love and all of this. Well, it's one thing to crack down like Paul and say maybe you should speak in turn and, don't do so much of the gluttony. But, and maybe you should just pipe down the orgies a little bit too. But then we went all the way to the other side, and these Christian pastors are coming along now in the last couple of centuries and saying, hey, we don't do any of the hanky-panky anymore. It's all from the devil. We're going back to the law of Moses that prohibits everything. Oh, wait a minute. Isn't that the same deity that took him to the land of milk and honey? Huh? Okay. Now you're really soaring, right? You've got your LSD that your bread is producing. The honey's making you really happy, taking you to places you've never been before. And now we're drinking the pomegranate and the grape wine, and that's fermented, and it's probably spiked with cannabis or, the mad honey or something else. Certainly got some frankincense in there, which probably gives you romantic feelings. Oh, no, honey, that's a sin too. No, honey, it's okay. There's no Capitol building. They don't require us to get a permit to enjoy life. So I think you and I can do whatever we want, Eve. And that's the story of how we had all these 8 billion people come about upon planet Earth. And ever since that time, they've been eating this awful carbohydrate and it's killing them like flies. Oh, what a deal, man. The Lord was just so sneaky to make us all down here and all these carbohydrates and just, poisons everywhere and hallucinatory drugs and wine. Dang, these Christians, you know what? Now I know that the deity that these Christians are worshiping and these Judeans is not the deity that built this beautiful paradise for us, Eve. I just realized this. The Christians would probably have condemned us to hell because we're getting high and drinking wine and eating all these darn carbs. Oh, but Adam, it's just so beautiful. Well, dear, you won't be beautiful long. You keep eating those carbohydrates, they'll put fat on you. You'll get all blown out of proportion, and then I won't want to have sex with you no more. You'll be ugly. Well, you'll be ugly too, Adam. I know. That's why we got to stay away from all this food. Where are we going to get food then? Well, we probably got to go to Walmart and buy some, supplements and maybe some protein shakes because they didn't got no carbohydrates. And of course, that protein's probably made from some genetically modified cow. I don't know. But as long as we're dissecting all these little nutrients and putting charts up and acting like we know what we're talking about, I think we could pull it off. And these Christians are stupid. They already have adopted the devil as their deity, and But yeah, I think that's the big deception, is that it's not that carbohydrates are bad for you. In fact, what if the reason that this lady says that this is bad for you, because she says we don't have any requirements, not essential, we could live without it. Well, what if her chart was in error, and her whole concept that she's putting out, and the whole concept of just about everybody on the internet at this point, I mean, we've got about 2 different groups that are making their way to the front of the stage at the moment. One is, let's just all eat animals, let's bludgeon them to death, and just suck, let's go hunting, right? Let's go kill something. And we'll just eat that. Like, we're caveman, me, Adam, you, Eve. Okay, we eat. Wait a minute, honey. What about all these fruit? Shut up, Eve. All right, but the other group is like, well, eat whatever you want, but dadgummit, don't ever eat any carbohydrate. So maybe eating meat would be a good choice, because if we just bludgeoned the animals to death every day, we wouldn't have to eat this carbohydrate thing. We've got everything we need there in this animal that we could eat. But the animal, I don't know if you know this, the animal's eating all these carbs. Uh-huh. The animals are eating the carbs too, honey. So these are some very sinful cows. I don't think the Lord would like these cows. They eat too many carbohydrates, for one thing, and they don't have any nutritional value. The cows have zero need for carbs. Oh, wait a minute. The carbs are turned into fat, and your brain prefers to use carbohydrates for its fuel. In fact, the entire body needs fuel. Now, if you're going to say we don't need fuel for the body, then you're probably losing your mind and you've got a couple of screw looses. But you say, well, we could burn oil. The thing about that is that while you can live on fatty acids, your brain can function on it. I've done it. I've tried it, guys. It works, and you can live that way. However, evidently, when the body makes fat from sugar, it goes directly into your joints and knees, and you feel healthier, and your body uses it as energy. And when you're working like a man, like, and you're building a house, and you're cutting down trees, and you're doing the yard, and you're planting, and you're doing all these, hiking, and doing all these things that grown-ups do, not like little babies that don't need much sugar because they're not going to be moving around much. They're just laying there in a crib. But when you get older, you need this fuel because you're going to be working hard. Now, if you went out and started logging timber or pulling green chain at the sawmill, like my dad had to do, or any other job like carpentry, or dangling from a cable being propelled by a helicopter across the flat sand deserts of Evanston, Wyoming, like my dad had to do, on the oil rigs. When you're doing that kind of work, you need energy a lot more than a baby would. And if you are only eating oil and protein, you won't have enough energy. You'll be so tired, for weeks, you might make it, pulling yourself along, dragging yourself to work, barely getting out of bed. You might make it. But at some point, there's going to come a point where you're going to start breaking down. Your knees are going to start hurting because you don't have enough. You probably can't get enough omega-3s and saturated fats and oils, and, especially with this darn diet we got here in the garden, Eve. All these fruit trees and stuff, there's not that much oil. Yeah, there's an avocado. There's some oil there, and there's some nuts. I get it. And I've been pushing it, and I believe in it. I believe in the oils and the fatty acids and the nuts. and the avocados. Just like the coconut, baby. You put the lime and the coconut, and you mix them both together. And you said, Doctor, call me in the morning. So, yeah, you could go and find fruits that just more or less have a lot of oil, like nuts. I agree with that, but there's a problem. What are we going to do with all these cocoa nuts, baby, and the bananas and the pineapples and the dates and the figs and the grapes and the berries and the, you know, pretty much all the fruit is got all these carbohydrates. We just throw them away. What, those are for the animals, or what do we do? Oh, then we eat the animals, right? We give that to the no. See, it doesn't make sense that we should avoid carbohydrates like it's the plague. Like, oh my goodness, the reason people are getting fat and their insulin is rising and staying to where you're going through the roof, you've got diabetes and cancer and all these other things, isn't because you had a carbohydrate in your meal. It's because you ate nothing but pure chemical processed food like sugar, which isn't carbohydrate. It's just some chemical white little, something like cocaine. They made it in a factory. It's an extraction. It's a chemical extraction. We don't eat foods that aren't whole. So the sugar that's in these fruits like dates and figs and bananas and all the others, even bananas, they have, if you eat them green especially, they have lots of fiber, and your body can process that sugar just fine. But it's like a time capsule. Throughout the entire day, you eat the carbohydrates. Throughout the entire day, you have energy. You need energy if you're going to go out there in the garden, my friends. And yes, you're going to need the nuts as well. This is what I'm coming to understand because I have lived it. I've practiced it. Remember the other day I was telling you guys that I hadn't eaten sugar for a long time and I was just feeling really, really, really bad. And just about so tired I couldn't get out of bed. And my knees and joints were hurting. So I broke down and bought some kind of a donut at the store, like a ding dong or something. And even though that was a very unhealthy type of sugar, and I don't recommend people eating ding dongs, but I could visibly feel the difference. My hand was so sore, my joints, my knees, and I was so tired, and just eating that ding dong, and this was many months ago, it literally, I could tell, made me feel better. So I had to figure out what was going on. So then a few weeks later, I made this video about how, sugar is something that we need to eat, but it was kind of left unsaid as to what the balance of sugar ratio to the protein and the, how much sugar do we need? And I don't even think at that time I was really aware in my mind. I don't think I was letting myself be aware of this. But and that's also before we start getting into the food that's in the promised land, which is mostly sugars like figs and dates and grapes and pomegranates and honey and olive oil. But it's like, okay, 1 part's olive oil, 2 parts ancient grain, not the modern grain, which has carbohydrates, a lot of protein, and honey, which is pretty much just hallucinatory or sweet, right? That's just for joy. That would just add that. That's the frosting on the cake. And 1 part olive oil, 2 parts juice, grapes and pomegranates. So it seems to me that ratio. Now, look, the fig has got so much fiber, dates, and things like this. It doesn't have as much sugar as it looks. And it's certainly not going to be spiking your insulin to a unsafe degree. I believe what's happening is it's the poisons that is killing you, not the food that the Lord made. I believe it's the poisons, and I believe that we should eat our vegetables first, like Mama told us, and have our dessert last. But don't you ever forget the dessert. Because those kids are going to go to bed pretty darn upset if you forgot the dessert. And you know something? You can make dessert with figs and dates and apples. I mean, apples, and you think they're unhealthy for you? Just slice them up, right? And you say, oh, yeah, but the pie crust is very unhealthy. Yeah, well, that kind of pie crust, go get some healthy grains and make it with nuts and you can make a very healthy pie crust. I guarantee it. And then you put these apples and sprinkle some brown sugar. Oh, Dave, no, that's poison. No, I said maybe some brown sugar. But you could also just put honey on it and some more nuts and maybe some grind some dates up and mix in it. I mean, use your imagination. It can make it pretty sweet and it can still be very healthy. You're just eating a slice of dates, apples, and nuts. There's nothing wrong with desserts, guys. So I do have to update the information that I'm learning. I stand by everything I said in that video about sugar. Sugar causes you to age. Sugar will give you death. But sugar is a chemical. It's just like that LSD we were talking about. Don't ever take LSD, the chemical laboratory LSD that people are trying to give you, like fentanyl, anything that, crack, whatever they make in some kind of a laboratory, or even if a scientist makes it, it's bad for you. It's not a whole food. It's a chemical extraction. And it isn't just a chemical extraction. Think about the fact that the sugar is white. Why is it white? It had nutrition in it when it was brown. That's why we use the brown sugar. But you'd be better off with molasses or honey or dates or something like this. But the way that they make this sugar is that they bleach it. I mean, it's literally all the color is gone from it. And I want you to understand something. Not only is all the color gone from it, but the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, everything's gone. They've only extracted this thing called glucose. And it's just not, your body can't process straight glucose. It needs to be with all the vitamins and the minerals and the phytochemicals and everything else that's in the plant, as well as the fiber, which is so important because it's absorbed by the fiber and it's released like a time capsule as you need it appropriately. So dates and figs, though they look sweet, taste sweet, are not harmful to you. And here is the other part of it. When you eat this sugar and this and pesticides and like we said before at McDonald's foods and stuff, like all these places where you go fast food, they don't ever perish. You can leave them in a paper bag for a year and they don't even grow mold because there's formaldehyde and some kind of biochemical, biocide all over the food that's gonna kill you. Don't eat that. That's what's killing you. And the gluttony, the Bible says don't be a glutton. Wonder why? Drunkard? That don't mean don't drink wine. It means you're just, all you do is drink wine all day until you're falling over and passing out. You're a glutton. You're a drunkard. Obviously, you don't drink wine all day long. You got to go work too. See, wine will make you tired. Cannabis can make you tired. You do those things in the evening and they will help you dream. They will help you be happy. They will help you sleep. Everything has a purpose. And we do all things with moderation, of course. But we need a wide variety of the plants. Each of the plants has different vitamins and nutrients and minerals. We need them all. And it's not fair to say that we have no need of sugar. Maybe they're saying there's no minerals, there's no essential vitamin or nutrient in the carbohydrate. Well, actually there is. It's a vessel that holds other things with it. We eat it as a whole food, but the carbohydrate itself is a fuel. And yes, it's essential that you have fuel. So she's not telling the truth. It's not fair to put carbohydrates in the same category as vitamins or nutrients. And then come up with this concept that we have nutrients that are essential. But then to say, yeah, but since carbohydrate is not a nutrient or a vitamin, then it's not essential. That's not true. It's essential because it's your fuel. Your brain burns sugar. And I don't know, I can't tell you this for certain, but my knees and my joints were hurting when I was not eating sugar. So even though, and I think probably the reason for it is I wasn't getting enough oils. I wasn't getting the proper fats. I was trying. I even went and got a big jug of walnut oil and was jugging that down. You know, I was eating half a stick of butter in my coffee. I was trying, but for some reason it didn't seem to work. And you don't put on any weight or anything. You get real thin, and that might be good for some people. Like, you know, some people lose weight when they go on a carnivore diet. And yeah, sugar, if you eat too much of it, will you put on weight. So part of the problem is that we're not supposed to be gluttons, and we're supposed to work and have exercise and go out and see the sun. We're not supposed to be overweight. We're not supposed to eat poisons. That's a far cry from saying that all these plants out here that have carbohydrates are poison. So what is the ratio between what we should eat with the carbohydrates, the protein, and the fat? Now, I was saying before that I thought we should eat 60% fat, 40% protein, and maybe 10-20% sugars, carbohydrates. I'm going to adjust that calculation just a bit. Now, I'm not a doctor, and that's a good thing because they're trying to kill you. But I do think that we could probably judge by the food that we have in our natural environment that grows naturally. If you go to this area that the Bible speaks of, the promised land, which I think was in the area of Goshen and not the area up around Palestine. But if you go there, you'll find there are a lot of palm trees. There are lots of figs and grapes and pomegranates and all of these foods that grow naturally. Palm trees grow everywhere. There's all kinds of fruit. The acai berries and dates and so forth. If you were to judge by that, bananas, coconuts, I would say that the easiest food to pick and that would take us back to the days perhaps of paradise where we weren't supposed to do the agriculture and by the sweat of our brow till the soil and eat lachem or processed food and grains and beans and cook it until we die. The original garden was a orchard, and those trees that produce fruit are usually sweet like pineapples. I didn't mention that before. I mentioned the coconuts, the bananas, but there's so many different kinds of fruit in the areas of the world, like the tropical areas where humans have lived primarily. All the fruit seems to be sweet. Now, if you go to Idaho and you go out through the woods, man, those huckleberries are everywhere. Thimbleberries, strawberry, the Idaho has a lot of fruit. But I'll admit, there's no fruit growing in the winter. But then again, there's not really anything growing in the winter. And you can pick the berries. There's also the Oregon grapes up there, with a little bit more sour, but they're still good. They have a lot of sugar. And there's lots of other kinds of fruits that grow. The huckleberries is the primary thing up there. They're just delicious. And you can pick gallons and gallons and gallons of them when they're in season. And then you could dry them and eat them throughout the winter. But I do think that in places like Idaho or in Russia or Europe or wherever, back in the day, I mean, there's lots of rivers and lakes and streams. And I think that Jesus gave us the fish to eat to tell us that this might be a change that he was advocating. Instead of being an agricultural person, He said you don't get figs from thorns and grapes from thistles. He was like, you don't, by the sweat of your face, till the soil and get anything out of it because they don't produce. But paradise was just these trees that you just pick the fruit. So I'm beginning to gravitate back to the idea that really we should probably grow these trees. And maybe the reason there are no fruit trees growing in a lot of areas in the world is it seems like the government doesn't promote that. They're constantly, this Arbor Day thing, the great John Denver used to talk about Arbor Day, and he said we should all go plant a tree. But when people go out and plant these trees, they don't plant fruit trees because they think they're a nuisance. The fruit falls on the ground. Somebody's got to pick it up. The birds come flying in. Oh, darn, now you got fruit on the ground. You got birds. You got, literally a balanced habitat now. Because before you didn't have these birds flying around everywhere, like in hordes, because you didn't have anything for them to eat. Because you were making the world and doing agriculture and planting, and you don't know what to plant. The Lord knows what to plant, what grows natural. But the world has become agriculture, and everywhere you can go from the West Coast to the East Coast in America, and imagine it's the same in Europe or anywhere else now. And all you see is cornfield after cornfield after corn. Oh, there's some beans, and there's another field of soy, and there's some rice, but it's just cornfield after cornfield after cornfield, and then the only fruit that you see growing is a little here and there, right? We got to have a little here and there. But for the most part, it's all agriculture. Now, strawberries and things like that grow in the wild on their own, but there are farmers who make it. If we stop doing all this agriculture and let the earth go back to its natural order, then these lowlands where they're making all the fields of corn would probably start producing the figs and the dates again and all the actual fruit. But we've cut them all down. And, if you don't believe me, just think about the fact that cannabis used to grow here in America along the roads and in the fields. You could just go harvest it for free because it grew naturally. But the government made this task force where they hired people. They may still have them. They probably just about wiped it all out by now. But they went for years along the highways and byways. It was kind of a secret program, and nobody really even heard about it or talked much about it. But these guys were going and looking for cannabis. They can literally see cannabis being grown through infrared. And I know they still do this in California. They have helicopters going, and if they see cannabis, by the virtue of the fact that they see the infrared that cannabis puts out, got a lot of energy. And that energy is why it's so healthy for you. And when they see it, they send a team down there and they go and root it all out, put pesticides on it and get rid of it and kill it. Because they don't want people having that. So all the cities in America, there's a lot of trees. They do a lot of planning and zoning, right? And along the freeways and byways, there'll be flowers, like the oleanders down the freeways in California. Oh, it's beautiful, smells wonderful. But they don't plant strawberries. They don't plant more fruit trees or mulberries. They'd be all over the ground, and all these birds would be flying around, and there wouldn't be any more bugs. It'd be a balanced habitat. The birds would be eating all the harmful bugs, and that's what the bugs are for, food for the birds. And why? Because you got to have this natural balance. Birds, squirrels, snakes, deer. But what's happened is all the animals have died because they can't get over the fences that we're making, and they can't get to the water, and they're getting run over by cars, like boom, 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 every 5 seconds, they're just plowing them over. I know in Wyoming, the diesel trucks that go through on Highway 35 and any interstate, they got to have these tall bumper guards or whatever, like metal mesh guards in the front of their truck, because they are mowing down deer, elk, antelope, rabbits. I mean, about every 10 seconds, boop, boop, there goes another rabbit, another squirrel, another deer, and they just throw them, they just fling them off The truck hits them and flings them off over the edge of the highway, and they land in the ditch. And then there's a part of the highway department up there that goes along just every day up and down the highways, picking up dead deer and rabbits. They don't want them to sit there very long, because then people would realize just how many animals are being murdered and wiped, raccoons and skunks and badgers. And I mean, by the thousands. How many of these animals do you think there are in nature that we can afford to just mow them down by the thousands every day? And these trucks have to have these guards, rabbit guards, deer guards in front, or else it'll just dent their front end of their truck and maybe even break a window or something like that. It's dangerous. Knock out their headlights or something. So they have guards when they go through there on their truck. Deer, rabbit guards. But that's what's causing pain, sickness, and death and disease. The imbalance. I don't think we should be agriculturalists. I think we should go back to things that grow. Remember, I used to say in the wild. Well, another way of putting that is, let's eat fruit and nuts and things that grow from the trees and bushes. And there are a lot of plants that have fruits that will grow for years. Like a tree doesn't last forever. Some trees last a couple hundred years. Well, even a tomato plant, if you're in an area where it doesn't get too cold, they'll grow for 10 years. And you can continue to harvest tomatoes. They're some of the best fruit, and there's where you get your vitamin C. Everything is provided in nature in balance. We need them. It's obvious that we want them. They taste good. They're sweet. They're beautiful red colors. The oranges are orange. The yellow lemons, the red apples. All these are delightful to the taste and enticing because we see them, we smell them. Here's how you know what you're supposed to eat, what the Lord says to eat. Notice that when the bee is flying around, he knows right where the flower is. And I know a lot of really ignorant scientists that think, well, that's crazy. How do they know? Must be some kind of radar. Radar? What? It's exactly the same way that we know where the flower is. It's beautiful. It's beauty. It's color. And there's an aroma. Hormonally, we're drawn to it. It's our life. Follow nature. Follow after what the Lord has given all of us. A nose, eyes, and we seek out what we want, what is pleasurable, what is sweet. You see, the Lord made some of these fruits very sweet on purpose. That's not the only flavor. I mean, there are other flavors. There are nuts that, what they call it, a nutty flavor, which is a delicious thing, and they go well with the fruit. So have them both. But just remember, don't overeat. Don't be a glutton. And don't add any poisons or genetically modified anything, but eat the whole food. And never buy the modern wheat, because it has 48 chromosomes, I believe it is, which is too many. So it's a long chain molecular structure your body can't digest. We got to go back to the einkorn, and I think some of them have like 8 chromosomes. So they're very small chain, and it can be easily digested and absorbed by the body. And the gluten that's in there and the, other substances that modern wheat has is in the proper balance. And there's plenty of fiber, and always make sure you get whole grain, because the germ is where a lot of the omega-3 is. It's a lot of the vitamins and nutrients is there in the germ. And here's the thing you probably won't hear anywhere else. On any plant, right where the fruit grows on the plant, that's where there were stem cells. The stem cells exist in the flower and in the fruit and the seeds, because those are living cells. And they're good for you, and they can give you energy and life. That's why they can find cannabis with the infrared. So I'm upgrading and adjusting my recommendation. And I know it's just me, just David Vose here. And I might be wrong. I don't know the exact ratio. I'm telling you, go into nature and eat what's provided, right? Don't make a garden and plant stuff in there you got to plant every year. You're going to have a garden, just you can facilitate nature, but get the foods that grow that you don't have to keep planting every year. If you live in a tropical area, plant some pineapple and some coconuts and bananas and wonderful stuff and dates, apples. If you live in the northern climates, you can plant apples and peaches and things. But, you know, things like plums and apples grow in nature. They grow in the wild where there are places where there's snow and stuff like this. The reason we don't have a lot of these fruit trees in northern climates today, or even in any climate nowadays, because the government is managing their forestry and their fields, and all of the land is being managed, just like the fish are being managed. And you can't fish there. You can only catch this kind of fish or this or that. You can hunt these kind of deer, but not those kind of deer. And there's a season for everything. And in their management, they don't know what they're doing. They're micromanaging everything, and they have no clue. They think we should go eat genetically modified corn, and they don't want us catching fish, so that's illegal. But it's just exactly the same when you're talking about eating part of a food or an extraction of a plant. Or when the doctors say, oh, you're deficient in calcium, so take calcium supplements. The reason why you should never take any supplements like that is because your body cannot absorb calcium unless it's got magnesium and sulfur and potassium and vitamin D and zinc and all these other things with it. Magnesium. If you don't eat a whole food, your body can't use it. So if you take something like calcium, it will become plaque in your arteries. It'll kill you. You don't take a vitamin E because there's 5 different kinds, and if you take one of them and neglect the other 4, you're going to be depleted in the other 4. If you take one vitamin or this vitamin or that vitamin and you're not getting it in a whole food, you're literally depleting yourself. And by the way, I want to point out all these things you buy in the store are fake. They're scientifically engineered and created in a laboratory. They're not real and they're not good for you. You're not getting a vitamin or a nutrient anyway. And there's a lot they're just not telling you. Like the kind of calcium they give you is from rocks. Your body can't absorb that. Or coral. But you need the kind of calcium that comes from milk and that the Lord provides from plants or whatever, that your body can absorb and process and use. So therefore, you need to eat plants and fruit that comes from trees. And if you go into nature and take a look with all the dates and bananas and pineapples and all the apples and everything else, I think the moral of that story, the way that cookie crumbles, is that we should just trust the natural environment. Wherever you live, there's food growing that would grow there naturally, and you should eat those foods. And many of them are sweet, and they will provide all the nutrients that your body needs. So the idea that I had before, that babies drink milk and there's only 7% sugar in the milk, I don't believe that anymore. I think I was in error, because I realize now that babies don't need to work and they don't need a lot of energy. They're just lying around. They kind of need to be in a coma. So the Lord gives them mostly fat. So instead of saying 60% fat and only 20% sugars and carbohydrates, I'm going to switch that around. We might need 50% or something like that carbohydrates in our diet or more. I don't think you could, as long as you're not a glutton and you're not eating the biocides and the chemicals and the poisons, but you're eating natural food, whole foods, I don't think you can go wrong. Some people might eat 60% fruits, but it's not like with that 60% of the food that you're eating that happens to be a sweet kind of food doesn't mean it's all sugar. There's still protein in the fig. There's still, there might be some carbohydrates in beans, but there's mostly protein. So the foods that you're eating, all of them have this balance already in there. We don't have to come up with the balance or what the actual, ratio is. We don't need to make a chart. We don't need a book to read about this. You just need to watch my video, guys. That's all. Just some common sense. Now go out there and do the right thing and get the word out. And let's start eating right. And lastly, before we close here, I'm thinking of literally trying to find a place where I could acquire the proper ancient grains and foods and recipes and things that we need that would make us healthy. And I don't know when or how, but I think I'm going to try to look into getting this available, and I'll have it available maybe in a link or something like that. No, I'm not trying to make a bunch of money off of it. I'm trying to have it so that we can have it available, because it's difficult to find the best recipes and this information that is just so difficult to find. We need to make it so that everybody can have this information and can get the food and have it delivered or something. Or we can talk about how we can grow it in our own gardens or whatever. But we need to start using the einkorn and the ancient emmer and the spelt. These are the types of grains and barley that Jesus used. And I'm going to go ahead and go. I'm going to leave it there. I really hope that you understand what I'm saying. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. I hope you have a wonderful evening. The Lord will bless you. Have a good one.